Jessie Callahan first noticed her during that silent sliver of morning just before dawn, when even the birds seemed to hush and the earth wears its sorrow like a second skin. The light hadn't yet found its color, only grayness stretched across the land. She was standing by the corral, barefoot, her dress stiff with grime and blood, clutching something tightly against her chest as though even a breath might tear it apart. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood on the porch, a cooling cup of coffee in his hand, watching the scene unfold like a memory he'd forgotten. The steam from the cup curled into the air, then vanished like most things tended to do out here. The girl didn't cry, didn't bolt. Her hair was a tangled mess, sunlight kissed in some places, knotted in others, and her face, Lord help him, looked too worn for someone her size. She couldn't have been older than 6 or 7, but her eyes belonged to someone who'd lived through storms and learned to stay quiet about them. "I ain't here to take nothin'," she said, voice faint as wind through loose boards. "Please, don't shoot." Jessie rose. The old wood groaned beneath his boots, and the sound made her flinch, but she held her ground. He walked slow, deliberate, not wanting to startle her further. He was tall, marked by time and hard work, and he understood not to come at the frightened fast. When he stopped in front of her, just a breath away, he looked down at what she was holding. Her arms tightened. "She's small, real small," the girl murmured. "Ain't cried once, don't move much neither." Jessie crouched, and the fabric shifted, revealing a tiny face, lips dark, nearly blue, eyes shut tight, fragile like something winter had left behind. He didn't ask who the child belonged to or where they'd come from. He simply reached out, calloused hands steady. The girl hesitated, then let go. Her arms dropped to her sides like something inside her had finally broken loose. He stood, holding the bundle. The baby's chest lifted barely, but it lifted. That was enough. He nodded toward the cabin. The girl didn't move. "You got food?" she asked, voice barely audible. "I ain't hungry." "But Mama," she trailed off and followed him. Inside, the place was bare but warm. The fire from the night before still glowed. Jessie knelt by the hearth and laid the baby on a wool blanket. He checked for breath again, thin and wheezing, but still there. The girl lingered near the door, looking like she expected to be turned away at any moment. Jessie filled a tin basin with warm water. "Wash," he said gently. "I'll take care of her." She nodded once, pale and ghost-like, then moved to the basin. As the rising sun painted the mountains gold and laid copper over the valley, Jessie worked in silence. He wiped the baby's face clean, warmed a bit of milk in a tin cup, fed her slowly. The girl watched each movement intently, as if she needed to memorize every step, like she might need to rescue someone else tomorrow. He looked at her once, searching for the right question. "What's your name, anyway?" He nodded. "I'm Jessie," that was all. Later, he found her curled near the fire, eyes wide open, watching the baby's chest rise and fall like it was the only thing anchoring her to the world. "She got a name?" he asked, and he shook her head. Mama didn't get time. Jessie swallowed the ache that rose in his throat. "She's still alive." A long pause, no answer. That evening, Jessie saddled up his horse and rode into town, leaving the 2 girls asleep by the fire. He didn't bother locking the door. The general store was quiet. Miss Tilda, who ran it, raised an eyebrow when he asked for milk, linens, salve, and cloth diapers. She didn't press, but her eyes narrowed the way women's eyes do when they sense there's more being said in silence than in words. "Storm rolling in?" she asked. "No, HM. Thought I saw it in your shoulders." He didn't reply, just paid in coins and turned to leave. By the time he got back, the baby was crying weak, like she wasn't sure how to ask for help yet. Ray was holding her, frozen, like afraid of doing something wrong. Jessie took the child gently, pressing her against his chest. He paced the room slowly, back and forth under the lantern glow, whispering nothing in particular, just being steady, being there. Chat said. Soft flickers of firelight traced the ridges in the log walls, painting the cabin with shadows. Jessie hadn't noticed when Annie drifted into sleep, but near midnight, she startled awake. Jessie sat near the hearth, holding the baby in his arms. Neither made a sound. The wind outside whispered through the trees, gentle, but restless, like old men murmuring secrets. Annie pushed herself up. Do you think she's going to die? Jessie turned toward her. She's fighting not to. There was a pause before Annie whispered, brittle and strained. Papa tried to bury her. Jessie didn't answer. She continued, her voice thin. Mama shoved me outside. Said, run to the ranch, the quiet one. The one with the bees. He won't send you away. Jessie's throat moved as he swallowed. You got a last name, Cutter. He flinched, just barely. Clayton Cutter was known across the ridge, mean drunk, cruel father, a man folk stayed away from. The sheriff used to say there was no need to poke a snake unless it bit first. Jessie nodded slowly. You got any kin in town? She shook her head. You cold? No, sir. You can rest. I'll watch over things. Annie stayed where she was. He hit Mama. Jessie looked deep into the fire. She kept saying sorry, like she was to blame. And when he said, she cursed him with another girl. He picked up the shovel. Jessie shut his eyes. When he opened them again, Annie was trembling, but dry-eyed. There ain't no crying in the dust, she whispered, as if repeating a phrase her mother had said more than once. He rose, grabbed the quilt from the cot, and laid it across her shoulders. She flinched at first, then leaned into it like a sunflower seeking warmth. A long silence followed. No movement, no speech, just the fire's crackle and 3 breath patterns, unsure of what tomorrow would bring. Then a knock, 3 gentle taps, too soft for the sheriff, too even for a drunk. Jessie motioned for Annie to stay where she was. He walked to the door, the rifle just beside the frame. He opened it a sliver. A woman stood barefoot on the porch, blood dried and dark on her dress. Her hair clung to her cheeks in soaked streaks. Her arms hung limp, but her eyes still burned with defiance. Lena May Cutter, is she? Lena's voice fractured. She's alive, Jessie said. Lena crumpled forward. Jessie caught her before she hit the ground. Inside, Annie stood frozen. Then, with a gasp, she dropped the quilt and ran to her mother, falling beside her. Jessie lowered Lena to the floor, near the fire. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cool and gray. But a slight smile touched her lips when Annie clasped her hand. You brought her here, Lena whispered. I did, Annie replied. And I told him what? Annie looked between Jessie and her mother, that we're not going back. Jessie stood above them, a silhouette cut out by firelight. His gaze shifted to the door. Somewhere, far beyond the hills, a man would wake soon and realize his daughters were gone. And this time, he'd come looking. Morning came. Lena was still breathing. Though her lips were dry and cracked, her skin as pale as ash, Jessie fed the fire until the cabin radiated warmth each time the baby whimpered. Annie jumped like it was her last moment with her. Outside, the land stirred, cautious. The rising sun filtered through dust, casting slow-turning motes like silent secrets. The wind paused, watching. Jessie brewed weak peppermint tea, dribbling some across Lena's lips as he gently supported her head. Her eyes fluttered, not quite ready to open. Annie sat curled in a blanket, knees tucked to her chest, tracking Jessie's every movement. She hadn't spoken, but her eyes always flicked back to the door. She wasn't waiting with hope, just fear. You trust me yet? Jessie asked, crouching beside her. Annie looked at him, her face unreadable, her voice quiet. Mama did. That was all he needed. By mid-morning, Jessie hitched up his horse. He needed supplies, diapers, milk, gauze, and word of what folks were saying. Annie stood at the cabin's door as he left, one hand clutching the frame, like she might close it tight behind him if she could. He didn't have to tell her to lock it. She understood. In town, sunlight kissed the church steeple, and wagons rolled slowly through dust-packed streets. Jessie's arrival was like the roll of thunder, quiet at first, then sharp. Miss Tilda raised her eyebrows when he stepped into her shop, twice in a week. What's gotten into you? Need baby cloth, milk, salve, and boots. Small ones. She turned slow, gathering the items, placing them on the counter with more noise than necessary. This for that baby you brought feed for yesterday. Jessie didn't respond. She narrowed her eyes. Heard she's not yours. She ain't. Then why? He looked straight at her. Because she's alive. Miss Tilda let out a long, resigned sigh. You always were the quiet, bleeding kind. Ain't no law says you got to takin' the broken ones. He slid coins across the counter. There a law says I shouldn't. She froze. No, Jessie. But Clayton Cutter's been pacing and drinking. Spit out his whiskey when I said I hadn't seen his girls. Don't say my name. I wouldn't. Her face softened. Never would. He left the store with his supplies, feeling. Eyes followed him as he moved toward the edge of town. Clayton was up now, hunting. Back at the cabin, the wind had picked up again. The baby lay quiet in a wicker basket Jessie used to collect honeycomb. Her eyes blinked once slow and unsure, as though waking might invite danger. Annie had swept the porch with a bundle of sage tied in twine. Mama always said cleaning's safer than praying. She muttered, not looking up. Jessie said nothing, but he noticed the tremble in her jaw inside. Lena stirred. She woke like a wave rolls in mouth twitching, then her eyes, and finally her breath. She tried to sit, grimaced, and sank back down. Annie rushed over. Her hands hovered like birds looking for a safe branch. Mama, you thirsty? I kept the water hot, just like you said. Lena brushed a hand across her daughter's cheek. You remembered. Jessie lingered a moment, then stepped out, taking the long path around the corral. He checked fence posts and loose boards, anything to keep his mind from the image of cracked lips and the sound of shallow breath. When he returned, Lena was upright, still weak but awake. Her hair had been slicked down with water and combed through with fingers. You saved us, she told Jessie. He shook his head, and he did. Lena reached for her daughter's hand, gave it a squeeze. She's got grit. No girl should need that much. Jessie's voice came low. But she did. Lena glanced around. You live alone. He nodded. Why'd you open the door? He held her eyes. Because she was alone. Lena blinked hard, holding back tears. The wind outside kicked dust across the porch. Lena pushed to stand, wincing. Jessie stepped toward her, but she held up a hand. I have to move. If I don't, I'll remember too much. He let her be. She walked, slowly, to the fire and stared down at the sleeping baby. She ain't got a name, she said. Annie turned her head. Maybe we wait. Let her name herself, when she's strong enough. Lena gave the faintest smile. Then, she'll pick something wild. That'd be fine, Jessie said. The world could use more wild girls who survive. That evening, Jessie made a stew from dried venison and carrots. Annie helped, standing on a crate by the stove. She didn't say much, but her eyes kept drifting toward Lena and the baby, counting blessings as though they might vanish. At any second, later, Jessie found her sitting barefoot on the porch again. Her dress was clean, but the weight of yesterday still clung to her. Her dress was frayed at the hem, and she clutched a wooden spoon like it was some kind of protection against nightmares. You staying out here tonight? Jessie asked. She gave a small shrug. I hear better when the wind talks. He eased himself down. Beside her, joints groaning. My papa, she said suddenly. He used to say girls brought misfortune. Said God had cursed us. Jessie didn't reply right away, only waited. Ma shamed him. Giving birth to me, another mouth to feed, and not a boy to carry the Cutter name. Jessie's voice was soft. What do you think? She paused. I don't think God cursed us. I think Papa just needed someone smaller to blame. Jessie exhaled, slow and tired. No child should carry such burdens. Annie looked over at him. But we do, don't we? He didn't disagree. He couldn't, that night. Jessie stayed up long after the fire had died down. He kept close to the woven basket, watching the baby's tiny limbs twitch in sleep, one delicate fist curling inward. Lena slept behind him on the bed, arms stretching toward her child even in dreams. Outside, the wind whispered at the window panes. Somewhere out in the wide valley, a lone rider moved beneath the moon, no light guiding him. Only the creak of saddle leather and the hush of a horse's breath. Jessie turned toward the sound. Jaw clenched. He knew that pattern. A man weighed down by more than gear. A bootstep that dug into soil like it was marking a grave. Clayton Cutter was close. The baby stirred just before dawn, tiny hands flailing softly, a faint breath escaping like a sob. Swallowed in sleep, Jessie leaned over, laying his palm gently on her chest. counting the fragile rhythm of her breath. "She's warmer this morning," came Annie's voice from behind. He glanced back. She was already awake, sitting on the floor, knees tucked to her chest, chin resting atop them. "You didn't sleep," he said. "I don't, really." He let it be. Some children grow up learning that sleep is dangerous, that if you close your eyes, something you love might vanish. He touched the baby's foot, so small, wrinkled, unbelievably soft. "She's strong," Annie whispered. "Mama always said girls, born after pain, carry all their mothers fight." He studied her, 6 years old, and already talking like someone who'd been shattered and rebuilt. The cabin smelled of ash and milk and old timber steeped in stories. Lena lay unmoving on the cot, her back curled inward, face turned to the wall. Her hair hung in matted clumps, and the bruises on her face had deepened. When Jessie brought over a mug of tea, she didn't stir. "She awake?" Annie asked. Stepping off the floor. Jessie nodded, pretending not to be. He set the tin cup down and crouched low. Lena's lips barely moved. "Is she okay?" she murmured. "She's breathing easier than before." Lena gave the faintest nod. Her voice, when it came, was dry and weak. "I dreamt she was born dead. Saw the hole he dug. You got her out." Jessie replied. "She didn't cry when she came, just stared at me, like she already knew she wasn't wanted. She looked at you because you're her beginning." Jessie said, steady. Tears welled in Lena's eyes but didn't fall. "I've got nothing left." Annie came closer. "You've still got your hands, Mama. You can hold her." Lena reached out, stiff and slow, her joints clicking beneath thin skin. Jessie passed her the baby carefully, and Lena cradled her as if she'd forgotten what tenderness felt like her hands only remembered pain. "She doesn't have a name," Lena whispered again. Annie looked at Jessie, then back at her mother. "Maybe that's okay. Means she can choose her own when she's strong enough to speak." Lena's lips curled just barely, a shadow of a smile. "You're too wise for 6, Jessie said. He added logs to the fire, outside. The wind tapped like it had news to deliver, but the cabin stayed thick with quiet. Lena fed the baby using a tiny dropper Jessie had carved from an old feather quill. Her hands trembled with every squeeze. Sometimes she paused to whisper soft, broken words, murmurs that only a mother would understand. Jessie stood at the window, scanning the ridge. To quiet. He'd seen the signs in town the day before, the sheriff looking away, people lowering their voices when he walked past. Clayton Cutter was asking questions. "You ever think about leaving?" Jessie asked, eyes still on the horizon. Lena didn't respond at first. "Tried once, ended up back with him." "What about now?" She hesitated. "Can't run with 2 little ones. You're not alone this time." She was silent. Then, quietly, "You planning to stand between us and him?" "I already am." She didn't say thank you, just whispered, "He don't forget things, especially not shame." Jessie's jaw clenched again. He remembered the bruises, the child's thin ribs. "Then we'll make it something worth remembering." Later that morning, Annie trailed Jessie out to the barn. She didn't talk much, just watched him work, splitting wood, checking fences, brushing down horses. She handed him nails while he fixed the water trough, gave him rope when he rewound it. Never asked to help, she just did. "You always this quiet?" Jessie asked. "Only when I'm scared." "You scared now?" She gave a slight shrug. "Less than before." He handed her a small wooden figure partly carved, maybe a deer, maybe a horse. "You finish it. Just keep the knife away from your fingers." Her eyes lit up, briefly, just for a moment. "Did you make this?" He didn't answer, just went back to work. He nodded quietly. "My papa only ever made fists," she said. Jessie didn't react. "Your hands can build something different," he replied. Inside, Lena was on her feet for the first time since arriving, barely steady, her grip tight on the bedpost like it was all that kept her from falling. But she stood, the baby, nestled in a wooden crate padded with worn shirts and wool, slept curled like a comma. The air smelled of warm bread, thanks to Annie, and the crisp tang of burning pine. When Jessie stepped back into the cabin, Lena turned to face him. Her face was pale, freckles now visible beneath the fading bruises, her hair tucked behind her ears. "I stood up," she said, her voice hoarse, but there was pride in it. "I can see that." Jesse said, "Bet it hurt like the devil." That's when Annie burst through the door, holding a bit of wood in her hands. "Look what I made," she exclaimed. "It's a horse, kind of." Lena smiled gently. "It's beautiful." Annie looked up at Jesse, hope in her eyes. "That means she's really back, doesn't it?" He leaned against the doorframe. A small nod. "Yeah, she is," but Jesse kept glancing out the window. Uneasy, the wind had shifted, no longer wild, but holding that strange quiet that always came before something broke. That night, he placed his rifle beside the door and slept with one boot still on. The horses in the barn were uneasy, stamping and snorting at shadows. On the cot, Lena lay awake, holding the baby, humming low. "What's she singing?" Annie whispered from the floor. Jesse listened. The words didn't carry, but the melody was soft and steady. "Maybe something passed down from her own mother. It's a promise," he said. Annie tucked herself closer and whispered, "I think I like it here." "Me too," Jesse replied softly. But miles away, a man had already left the saloon and taken the east road. Clayton Cutter. He was closer than anyone realized. The first sign wasn't sound. It was the animals. Jesse's bay gelding shifted restlessly, ears laid flat, as though remembering something mean. Even the chickens fell silent, the stillness clinging to the ground like mist. Jesse woke early, barefoot on the cold floor, the slats of the cabin letting in a faint, colorless light. He didn't build a fire. The wind whispered in a steady hush, as if murmuring a name he hadn't said aloud in years. "Clayton." Lena sat up, her damp hair clinging to her neck. The bruises had begun to change color, but her eyes had grown sharper. "He's close," Jesse said. Lena didn't ask for proof. She simply pulled the baby against her chest and wrapped them both in a shawl. Annie stood in the doorway, mid-bite with a biscuit in one hand and a spoon in the other. "What now?" Jesse replied. "We get ready." Quietly, they moved with the calm that only people familiar with chaos understood. Jesse showed Annie where to go if someone knocked, how to hide with the baby beneath the floor, a trapdoor hidden under an old rug and a chest of beans. Annie listened intently. "She ever been in the dark like that?" Jesse asked. "She was born in it," Annie whispered. Lena moved slowly, but everything she did had purpose. She packed clothes, bundled what she could, slid a knife under her pillow. She didn't ask if it was allowed. She didn't need to. That part of her had died the day her husband dug a grave for their child. By midday, a rider crossed the dry creek bed. Jesse spotted him from the ridge. He couldn't make out the man's face, but he knew the horse's stallion with a torn ear. Jesse had branded that ear himself years ago, after Clayton had come drunkenly demanding money that was never promised. Clayton was nearly here. Jesse didn't go back right away. He sat on a rock looking out over the valley, hands laced, elbows on knees. The mountains behind him like quiet sentinels. When he returned, Lena was bathing the baby, Annie dried Tiny. Cloths beside her, both of them wrapped in a moment of fragile calm. "I saw him," Jesse said. Lena stopped what she was doing. "How long?" "An hour. Maybe less." She gave a slow nod. "He'll ride in like he owns everything." "Not today," Jesse replied, loading his rifle. The sun began its descent, drawing long shadows across the ground. Dust stirred from the earth and the air grew tense, thick with the weight of something waiting to fall. Standing outside, Jesse turned to Lena. "Do you remember when you first met him?" She kept her eyes ahead. "He smiled when he lied," she said. Jesse nodded. "I was 16. Thought he was a man. He was just a wound in a nice coat. And now I'm tired of bleeding." They stood together, facing the road, the horizon glowing in the blush of evening. Annie came out, something cupped in her hands. "I gave her a name," she whispered. She handed Jesse a carved piece of wood shaped like a cradle. One word was etched on the bottom: "Mercy." Lena took it with trembling fingers. "That's what she is," Annie said. "She deserves to be called." No more silence. Jesse pocketed the carving just as they heard the hooves, slow, certain, not rushed. The sound of a man who expected everything to fall into place before him. Clayton Cutter rode into view, a shotgun across his back, a smug look already painted on his face. His eyes locked on Lena. "Well," he drawled, "ain't this a picture?" No one answered. I came to collect what's mine, he said. Lena tightened her hold on the baby. Jesse stepped between them. They're not yours. Clayton laughed, swung off the horse in one fluid, cocky motion. You got a badge, Jesse, no. Then move aside. No, Clayton's. Eyes slid to Annie. You told, didn't you? She stood tall, chin lifted. I told the truth. His expression turned dark. You'll regret that. Jesse didn't move for his rifle. He didn't have to. Lena stepped forward, voice low and clear. Her name is Mercy. Clayton blinked. What? You tried to bury her without a name, but she's alive. Her name is Mercy. For a moment, his sneer faltered. His jaw tightened. But Lena didn't flinch, and Jesse didn't move. The wind whispered again through the trees, not hiding this time but watching. Chat said. Jesse's hand moved before his words did. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out the carved nameplate, and placed it gently on the porch rail. His voice was calm. Steady, you don't scare us anymore, he said. Clayton's fingers twitched toward his belt, the tension wrapping the air like a noose. For a moment, everything froze. Then, Clayton shifted, not fast, but with the cold confidence of a man who had never needed speed. Only fear. His movements were slow, intentional, soaked in cruelty. But Jesse didn't move back. He stepped off the porch, placing himself between Clayton's shotgun and the women. His boots crunched against the gravel, each step louder than a gunshot in the silence. If you reach for that iron, Jesse warned, his voice barely above a whisper, you won't have time to regret it. Clayton's lips twisted into a sneer. You think I'm scared of you, ranch boy? Jesse's eyes didn't leave him. No, but you should be scared of her. He nodded toward Lena. She was standing tall now, frail, shaking, but upright. Her shawl had fallen away, revealing her thin frame and the baby she held close. The cabin's firelight spilled out behind her, casting a warm glow that lit her up like a woman forged in flame. Clayton scoffed. You think that broken woman's gonna stop me? She already has, Jesse replied. You just haven't figured it out yet. Clayton's hand dropped to the butt of his gun, but he wasn't the fastest. A flicker of red moved from the porch. Annie stepped forward, barefoot, her face smeared with dirt. In her trembling hands was a lit lantern. With a cry, she hurled it. Glass shattered. Oil spread in a slick bloom across the dust. Flames caught immediately, curling and twisting with a frightening grace. It wasn't loud. It was worse, a slow, deliberate fire, hungry and crawling. Clayton stumbled back as the fire chased his boots. He cursed, batting at his smoking coat. His horse panicked and tore free, disappearing into the hills. Lena stepped down from the porch, her arms wrapped around the baby. Her eyes locked on the man who had once dug a grave for her child. You tried to erase her, Lena said, voice clear. You thought if she had no name, she'd vanish. Clayton was breathing hard now, his coat charred, face smeared with soot. You hit me. You cursed her. You ruined things that were never yours, she said. She's mine, Clayton growled. No, Lena answered. She's Mercy, and she was never yours to begin with. Clayton raised his shotgun, but Jesse was already moving. A single shot cracked the air. It echoed through the canyon like a bell marking the end of something rotten. Clayton's aim faltered, his shot hit dirt, and Jesse crashed into him. Like a storm held back too long, Jesse didn't fire again. He let the rifle fall and slammed his shoulder into Clayton's chest, knocking him to the ground. The fire crept closer. Jesse straddled him, pressing his forearm against Clayton's throat. I could end this right now, Jesse growled. Clayton spat blood, struggling for words. Jesse pressed harder, until a small hand tugged at his coat. Don't, Annie said quietly. He'll come back. Jesse looked down at Clayton, burned, broken, coughing in the dirt. No, Jesse said. Not like this. He has to carry it now. Annie murmured, that's worse. The sheriff arrived soon after, drawn by the fire lighting the field like a signal. He took one look at Clayton, cuffed, barely conscious, and said nothing. Tilda stood nearby, arms crossed. Town heard it all, she said. You won't need to explain a thing. Jesse nodded. Once, there were no thanks, only understanding. By morning, the flames had gone out. Blackened patches marked the earth, but the cabin stood untouched. Mercy slept peacefully in a basket near the hearth. Lena sat on the porch steps, her face turned toward the rising sun. She looked different, not whole, not healed, but grounded, present. Annie brought her a cup of tea and sat beside her, kicking her feet idly. "You still thinking of leaving?" Jessie asked, stepping outside. Lena shook her head slowly. "I don't think I ever really wanted to." Jessie leaned against a post. "They'll talk. They always have," she said. "I mean after this." She looked at him for a moment. "They'll forget." "No," Jessie said. "But this time, they'll remember for the right reasons. They'll remember you standing." Lena gave a faint smile. "As long as they say my daughter's name." Right behind it, Annie was carving again, this time into the porch railing, carefully, letter by letter. "MERC why I didn't think we'd make it," Lena whispered. "Not really. You did." Jessie replied. "That's why you ran." She glanced at him. "Why did you open the door?" He didn't answer right away. Then, softly, "Because someone once closed it on my mother. I still remember the sound." Lena reached out and laid her hand over his. Rough met rough. The wind shifted, bringing the scent of pine. Birds began to sing. The fence still needed mending. The barn roof still leaked, but the world felt changed, softer, like even it had been renamed. Jessie watched as the baby yawned beneath Lena's fingers and stretched in her sleep. "What will you tell her?" he asked. Lena looked down at her daughter, then up at the sky. "I'll tell her she was born of fire," she said, "and the fire didn't consume her. It gave her meaning."